Hey, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Got another Dead by Daylight video today. So basically I wanted to talk about the crazy new perk meta for killers that just came out with the release of Blight's new perk, Hex Undying. I think this is really going to change up the game for any killer with high mobility, including him, Freddy, Oni, Spirit, Nurse. And it's basically running Hex Undying with Hex Ruin, with the newly buffed Tinkerer, as well as Barbecue and Chili. Barbecue and Chili can really be whatever perk you want it to be. But the first three perks have such good synergy, it's kind of nuts. So I wanted to do a video on it with a win that I got with Freddy using it. So basically, for those of you who don't know, the new perk, Hex Undying, makes it so that whenever another totem is cleansed, in this build it'll be Ruin. If they cleanse Ruin first, then Ruin, instead of going away for the rest of the game and you having three perks, it will instead be transferred to another dull totem. So what that means is Hex Undying basically acts as an insurance policy to make sure your Ruin lasts 2 to 3 times longer. Worst case scenario is that Hex Undying gets cleansed first and takes one for the team. That means that Ruin is still up in the game and another totem the actual Ruin totem will need to be cleansed. In addition, Hex Undying has a nice little bonus where, and this is more situational, but it's got me a few free hits. Anytime someone is near your totem, it'll show you their aura for 4 seconds. More niche, but honestly, it's got me a few free hits, as I said. I'm going to just show you guys gameplay for the rest of this, and talk more about the build as we go. So, basically, the way you play this, and I started off playing this with Blight, and I know a lot of other streamers did too, but this really works for any high mobility killer, like I said, is you play the chase normal, but as soon as Tinkerer goes off, which just now got buffed to be at, 70%, gen completion compared to like 85%, which is what it used to be. 70%, you now have time to, in the case of Freddy, use your generator teleport to get to the generator and spook them off the gens. And what's really nice about using this on Freddy in particular is I know that his god build before was like Corrupt Intervention and Pop Goes a Weasel. In fact, that was the meta before Blight came out. You have Corrupt Intervention, which does what old Ruin did before it got nerfed, and it basically, it gives you enough time to, set up. If you're like a trapper hag, you have time to set up. Or if you're any other killer, it makes it so that you can get it down without, a generator being, across the map, getting completed before you even find a survivor because they happen to spawn on the other side of it, say on a map like Mother's Dwelling. So before, the meta was Corrupt Intervention and Pop Goes a Weasel, which I still think is better for killers that don't have mobility. Just because Ruin only works well if the killer can actually get to the generator in time before it's completed to spook them off the gen. Like this build, I tried it on Doctor and Leatherface. It's not as good because they don't have the mobility to actually get there in time. Like, Tinkerer can go off, but if Leatherface is across the map, he has no way to get there in time. But Freddy, on the other hand, especially if you use the add-on that I'm using in this video, I think it's the Nancy's Masterpiece, the green add-on basically makes it so that your generator teleport cooldown is reduced for each person in the dream world. I'm using that with Swing Chains, which is probably Freddy's best add-on, or one of his best. It basically slows down the game the most for more people in the dream world. But this build is more focused on scaring people off of gens, and what's nice about this build on Freddy is before, when I was using Corrupt and Pop Goes a Weasel, which was my tryhard build to basically compete against really good teams at rank 1, was say you hook a person, sometimes you teleport to the wrong generator because smart survivors will hide from your Barbecue and Chili. So I'll oftentimes go to a generator that it's at 30% completion, and 8 seconds later another generator gets completed that I could have teleported to, and then Pop Goes a Weasel gets no value from me. So this way, this makes it with Tinkerer now, you actually have a chance to get a more accurate read on what generator you need to patrol after getting a hook, or just in general, if you're in a chase and say the survivor's in a safe spot, you know to ditch the chase and just teleport to that generator instead. So it has a really nice synergy with, Freddy, Blight, and Billy especially, anybody who has high mobility, because you can get to the generator before it's done. And then what's nice is, if you scare them off the generator, Ruin automatically regresses the gen, so you can just get straight into chasing people. Before, with Freddy, you teleport to a gen, you have to immediately use Pop Goes a Weasel and then chase the person, and then the person gets free distance on you. But now that you can just teleport and Ruin does the work of regressing the generator for you automatically, you can get right to the chasing. which feels like it plays a lot smoother, and it's really nice. Because before you TP there and you kind of lose momentum kicking the gen. Now it's like, where do they go? They got to a safe spot, or you lose them completely because they're injured and they have iron will and they're hiding or something. This just lets you say, screw you, we're getting in a chase right now. So honestly, this build is amazing, and I think this is going to be the new meta with the better killers in the game. With the exception of Pyramid Head, who's a better killer in this game, but he doesn't have mobility or Doctor. I feel like this is going to be what you're seeing. I've tried it on Spirit, and it's really good on Spirit. The Hex Undying with the Ruin. And it honestly makes Ruin a meta perk again, because back in the day, Ruin was the most used perk just because it would make them so they had to hit great skill checks, and it forced them to cleanse the totem before they could get gens done. But the problem is, since Ruin is a Hex, a survivor could spawn on it, and then bam, you're with 3 perks 10 seconds into the match because it got cleansed. With Undying, it basically makes it so that I've had games where Ruin lasts the entire game. Or if it goes away, I've already gotten like 4 to 5 hooks. Like, I'm already halfway through the objective that I need to do as a killer, which is technically get 12 hooks, even though that's not feasible. But 10 to 12 hooks is average what you'd get as a killer to win, or I guess to pip. And Ruin lasting so long and you playing a killer that has no mobility to get value out of it is absolutely huge. And that's why I chose this gameplay. Is you'll see me go to generators as soon as Tinkerer procs. I usually always have my generator teleport, because I'm making sure to keep it on cooldown for when I really need it. And what's nice with Freddy too is you can scare people as well off the gen. You can kind of pretend to teleport to it, and then they get scared. Some of them will run away, which lets Ruin kick in a little bit. And it's great because, Hex Undying on its own is a whatever perk, and Hex Ruin on its own is also a whatever perk to me. But when you combine the two, you definitely have some of the best perks I've seen in the game. Like, this is definitely the best perk killers have received since Corrupt Intervention. And I think I mentioned that in my previous video when I was talking about the Blight. But now I feel like the meta is going to be shifting, like I said, from Corrupt Intervention and Pop Goes the Weasel to Hex Undying and Hex Ruin. And I really hope it doesn't get nerfed, because it's nice to have some build variety. And I also don't think it's OP, because on some maps, like this one in particular, Macmillan, the totem spawns are not great. Like, there will be some games where they will still cleanse, like, you can have one chase and they'll still cleanse 3 to 4 totems. But on other maps, like Leary's or Haddonfield, where the totems are a little bit better hidden, like, this build is really nuts. I don't think it's overpowered at all. I still don't think killers have anything overpowered that's not iridescent hatchets. Like, even Compound 21 I thought was fine. In fact, I thought it was almost necessary on console to try and track people with Blight, because his power gets a little rough to control. But overall, like, the synergy between the newly buffed Tinkerer, which got buffed about a month ago with the Hillbilly Leatherface changes, as well as Hex Undying and Hex Ruin, is really nice. I mean, the 4th perk, like I said, it can really be whatever you want. Like, if you want, Brutal Strength, if you're playing as Blight, to just, break the pallet and then catch up to them before they hit the next loop faster, you can do that. If you want to keep Barbecue like I do on Freddy, you can do that as well. Barbecue is kind of hit or miss. Sometimes we play against teams that are really good against hiding against it. But also, I think this build buffs Barbecue, because a lot of survivors, they don't want to get off the gen and hide in the locker for 5 to 6 seconds and let that generator regress. They want to sit on the gen, and that's what's nice about Ruin. Is it like, if you're playing against solos, it really pressures people to just sit on the gens for a really long time. And I've seen people get 2 hooked, and I'm not even camping hooks or anything. They don't want to lose progress on these gens because they know Ruin is going to regress it. And there's times, like, where Pop Goes the Weasel is kind of weak, because, like, the main weakness of Pop Goes the Weasel is you have to disengage yourself from chases and choose whether you want to commit to the chase or disengage and commit to a generator. And a lot of times when games are more fast-paced, you don't even get a chance to kick a gen. So this build is honestly great. It feels like it's got more gameplay involved instead of you just, patrolling gens and finding out which one needs to be kicked. Tinkerer kind of does that for you. Ruin also does that for you. So all you have to do is just follow the direction it tells you to go in, and you could just focus on chasing, which is honestly the best part of the game. And I think it's the most fun for both the survivor end, because that's my favorite part, is spending more time with the survivor and with the killer and chases, but also the killer, playing killer and being with chases on people. Like, patrolling gens and repairing gens is probably the least fun part about this game. And with gen speeds the way they are, I mean, Ruin is still Ruin, and it still has the weakness of, like, if you can't actually commit enough pressure on people to keep them off gens, then yeah, they're just going to slam gens right through Ruin. And there are games where you'll play a really good team and you haven't gotten a lot of hooks, and all of your total, like they'll get Undying first and then they'll get Ruin right after, and then the gens start flying and you kind of wish you had Pop Goes the Weasel. So it's not the perfect build, but I do think it's going to be stronger than Corrupt Intervention and Pop Goes the Weasel, just because those high mobility killers they typically have stuff in their kit that's really good for chasing and getting to gen. So like Freddy's got the dream snares for the anti-loop. Spirit is just Spirit. Doc is an exception. I'm actually not sure about Doc. Doc might be good this build, and he might not be. I mean, when you put people in Madness 3, you are making them snap out of it, which means it's time spent that they can't repair gen. But overall, I don't know, I feel like it's made for high mobility killers. Billy, Freddy, Spirit in particular, probably Nurse as well, to be honest. Like, Nurse could be really good. She gets Tinker, she can just, teleport right to that gen as well. But overall, it's refreshing to see behavior throw the killers a bone for once and give us a really strong perk. I mean, it's still not as strong as the Soul Guard Decisive Strike Unbreakable combo. And the thing that not a lot of people are talking about, which I find funny, is that this combo with Hex Undying and Ruin, the fact that totems are almost always active throughout the game, it actually buffs the Soul Guard Unbreakable combo. Because those of you who don't know, Soul Guard lets a survivor self-res as long as a Hex totem is active. And since the whole point of Hex Undying is to keep totems active for as long as possible, anybody running Soul Guard basically has no mither for free. Without the drawbacks of no mither, and with the buff that Soul Guard gets, where if they revive themselves off the floor, they can tank a hit because they get the endurance status effect. So this buff, the only downside, probably the biggest downside, is it actually buffs Soul Guard Unbreakable, which is obnoxious. But luckily a lot of people don't have that Cheryl Mason perk yet. But overall, it's just for the general survivors you'll play against, because DS Unbreakable is popular, but Soul Guard DS Unbreakable is a little more sweaty and not as common. It's a really good build. I highly recommend people try it out. It's nice to be able to stay in chases longer and not have to kick gens all the time. And I think it's the best build. I honestly think this is the new killer meta. I hope it does not get nerfed. I don't think it needs to get nerfed, because again, you're trading off Corrupt Intervention, which completely stops all generator progress at the start of the game for the 3 furthest gens from you. Ruin doesn't do that. They can still work on gens when they're far away from you. The skill involved is you getting them off those gens in the first place. There's in the early game, Corrupt and Pop is probably stronger. It's just for the middle and late game, Ruin and Undying is probably going to be more helpful and just feels more fun, honestly. Overall, honestly, I'd say if you guys haven't tried this out, definitely check it out. I think it's a really, really strong meta build that's come out, and I think it's refreshing to shake the meta. And before I go, I've had some people ask me where I would rate Blight, on a tier list and stuff, and I have 2 mentions about that tier list. And first, I just want to say I rated Doctor lower than I originally anticipated. Doc is actually top 5 in this game. I would probably put him above Pyramid Head. And then as for Blight, I would say he's fighting Pyramid Head right now for top 5, for the 5th place spot. I think if you can land your attacks, he's really strong. I feel like he's just a couple places away from being almost Spirit and Nurse level, honestly. Yeah, he's not the hardest guy to juke. You just have to stick to short loops. If you see him charging at you, a lot of people hide behind trees and rocks, and that typically works pretty well. And then on some maps, not so much Rotten Fields as bad as I thought it would be, but more like Haddonfield. Stuff with a lot of obstacles in the way. Basically, the same stuff that screws over Billy is going to be the same stuff that screws over Blight. Billy handles Rotten Fields a bit better than he does, but I've had some good games on Rotten Fields, surprisingly. There's a couple generators and hooks in the cornfield, and if you have the right add-ons, like the slam duration or the movement speed, you can actually make some plays in the corn, and I think a lot of survivors underestimate that. But anyway, guys, that's all I have to say for that. Just wanted to bring up the Hex Undying Ruin combo. I think it's sick. You guys should try it out. I hope it doesn't get nerfed, because survivors have way more overpowered things than this in the game. Case in point, Soul Guard DS Unbreakable. But anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and I'll catch y'all later. MCKOOKIE out.